Donald Trump has won the Republican primary, as we've seen in New Hampshire today, cementing his place now as the Republican presidential nominee. Sky News Washington correspondent Annelise Nielsen joins me now from New Hampshire, where I suspect she's getting very excited about the fact that it's now South Carolina and then on to Florida and a bit of sunshine and a little less freezing conditions. It's all over. Trump's won.
Trump's won, absolutely, and Nikki Haley was the first to concede that. It's not an easy result for her. I think they were expecting potentially an upset win that would have completely redefined how this race runs. But the numbers are landing in something of a close margin, given how dominant Donald Trump's been in this race so far. So the Trump campaign's coming out and saying, hey, we've won. This is ours. No one can beat us. It's time for Nikki to drop out and for us to start taking this seriously. The Haley campaign is saying that they've still got a lot of gas in their tank, that this is a close result, that 50% of Iowans didn't want Donald Trump, and now they've got a fairly similar, if not as close result in New Hampshire. But they brought over a lot of those independent voters and a lot of Democrat voters. There's two ways to interpret that. The interpretation is, hey, she'd do very well at a general election with independents coming over and voting for her. She might get some swing voters. The other interpretation of that is, hey, look, these voters might come out for you on a primary day because they don't like Donald Trump, but when push comes to shove in November, they're going to vote Democrat because they'd rather Biden over Trump or something similar. So there's a lot of different ways to read this. She's still in the game. And very much the message from Donald Trump was that he thinks it's in the bag. She's saying it's not over yet.
We've won almost every single poll in the last 3 months against crooked Joe Biden, almost every poll. And she doesn't win those polls. And she doesn't win those. This is not your typical victory speech, but let's not have somebody take a victory when she had a very bad night. She had a very bad night.
I want to congratulate Donald Trump on his victory tonight. He earned it, and I want to acknowledge that. Now, you've all heard the chatter among the political class. They're falling all over themselves, saying this race is over. Well, I have news for all of them. New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over.
So, Steve, this was momentous. There's not usually this much focus on New Hampshire. It's often a huge part of the political calendar here because it's first in the nation. But this was higher stakes than normal, given it was just down to these two candidates. And now the speculation is Nikki Haley could drop out before South Carolina.
What's your take on the theory that the Democrats would rather have Trump up against Joe Biden rather than Haley because they believe that she is more likely to beat Biden? I mean, is there any, is that just Democratic wishful thinking?
Oh, I think we're in the realm of that being a fact. We've had Joe Biden put out a statement tonight saying it's clear now that Donald Trump is the candidate and listing all the reasons why he'd be better than Donald Trump. Well, the polling does consistently show Nikki Haley polling well ahead of Joe Biden, and his age is a factor. It's becoming an increasing factor with Donald Trump. He's making some mistakes on the campaign trail, and it's looking like his mind's scattered. It's no surprise given he's facing criminal trials in multiple jurisdictions, over 90 criminal charges. This is nothing small to be tackling. And, he at one rally was repeatedly referring to Nikki Haley when he was obviously describing Nancy Pelosi on January 6th. These all raise a lot of issues for voters, but then also I've been out on a lot of these polling booths and at caucuses. You don't see young people participating at this level. Primaries are often older demographic and then the more devoted base, and so they're not representative of what washes out at a general election. But absolutely, I would say that no one wants Donald Trump running more than Joe Biden in this race.
Just finally, Annelise, Haley, in that speech that she made, which Donald Trump described as more like a victory speech, she talked about going home to South Carolina. She's really put the pressure on herself there, hasn't she? Because if she doesn't win that primary in South Carolina, game's over.
Well, she's put the pressure on herself, yes, but everyone else has as well. This is huge for her. She was the governor there. She started out in Congress at the state level. She is a political player there, and she made some really big moves as a governor there. She had an historic moment where she got the Confederate flag taken off the Capitol in South Carolina. That's huge for a Southern governor at a point of racial tension to bring people together at a moment like that, and she references it consistently on the campaign trail. But right now she's seeing a lot of the establishment go towards supporting Donald Trump. They think it's going to play better for them in the long run, for their own political security, and he does really hold so much of the Republican Party ideologically, and so that's what she's up against. One of the tricky things that she's had to walk around is the fact that a lot of those members of Congress in South Carolina won't support her. She says it's because she tried to hold them to account, she tried to make public what they voted for, what their salaries were, all that kind of nitty-gritty accountability from a state level. But by the same token, it's really hard to convince the rest of the country you're going to be the candidate who can win the Republican Party presidential victory if you can't even win your own state. That's where you should have the home ground advantage. And it looks like from the polling, Donald Trump has it there. Although the polling, we do have to take into consideration it was about 10% off in New Hampshire, it appears. It was something similar in Iowa. Maybe we're not getting them all right, as indicative as they can be. So it's down to her and how much political skin she wants to expose, whether she does go all the way through South Carolina, and she says she's going to do it.
Great coverage as usual, Annelise. That's our Washington correspondent there in New Hampshire, Annelise Nielsen.